Hello, my name is Erin Grubbs. I'm the manager of local history and genealogy at the Springfield-Greene County Library District. In October 2019, my wife Erin and I traveled to Europe visiting England, Scotland, and Italy. Our friends Julie and Jared lived in Italy at the time, so we took the opportunity to visit them and their two children. This was Erin's third trip to Europe, but my first, so I was very excited to see many of the locations that I have been researching and studying for years. Today, I will cover a couple of the locations that we visited in Northeast Italy. The first city that we visited was Venice. Erin and I flew into Venice on October 17th and explored the city for a few days by ourselves. Venice is a collection of 118 islands connected by a reported 400 bridges. The Venice airport is on the main continent. So from the airport, we took a water taxi to Venice, which was a large boat that held 20 to 30 people and their luggage. Venice is known for many different things. Perhaps first and foremost, its canal system and gondola boat rides. Here you can see the Grand Canal. Here's smaller canals in between some of the buildings in the city, and some gondolas waiting for passengers. Venice is filled with classical architecture. This basilica was built between 1631 and 1687. Venice is also well known for its glassmaking. Murano glass is believed to have been made for over 1,500 years, with the most well-known glassmakers on the island of Murano itself. You can take tours of the glassmaking facilities on the island from Venice. Murano glass is known for its unique style, rich colors, and beautiful shapes and patterns. The larger pieces are traditionally expensive and considered luxury pieces of art. Masks are also throughout Venice. The tradition of wearing masks in Venice dates to at least the 12th century. So throughout Venice, one will find masks of all kinds, and shapes, and sizes for sale and on display. Venice is a tourism city. In 2019, nearly 36 million people visited the town. Those numbers are hard to conceptualize, especially when you consider the city itself does not have that much landmass. The result of so much tourism has driven the city's population away to the main continent. Knowing how popular of a tourism destination Venice is and was, Erin and I were shocked to see how deserted the city could be. We were able to find a hotel room towards the center of the city that was much more affordable than anything towards the Grand Canal, especially when you consider the amount of amenities that the room offered. Most European hotel rooms are small, but we found a room in Venice that had a large living room, a separate bedroom, and 2 bathrooms for a fraction of the cost of a room located close to the Grand Canal. We really enjoyed our visit to the city, but found staying away from the Grand Canal and the other major tourism spots really enjoyable. It took us a minute to find the hotel, as the winding streets and bridges and canals can make it easy to get turned around. Coupled with the limited exterior signage, it took us just a second to find the right place. But honestly, allowing ourselves to get lost while exploring the city was the most enjoyable part. We felt safe at all times of day and night, exploring and seeing what was around the next bend or over the next bridge. Our hotel room was right around the corner from a large city square filled with shops and restaurants. At night, people gathered eating outside and listening to music. Street vendors sold glowing helicopter toys that they shot into the air. As more kids purchased these items, the night sky was illuminated with different streaks of color. Erin and I ate at several of these restaurants in the square, and the food was fantastic. That first night, we explored the area around the square and found the streets empty. October is definitely outside of the normal tourism season, but we were not expecting to see no one. It was a little haunting with the winding streets and the classical architecture, but it was an amazing experience. The next day, we set out to explore Venice even more. Walking the streets, we found a few people, exploring the shops in the neighborhoods, and we allowed ourselves to get lost, just appreciating the beauty of the Venice's architecture, the layout, and the canals. We eventually made our way back to St. Mark's Square and the Grand Canal, and it was like stepping into a whole other world. The square and the Grand Canal walkway were packed with people. The difference between the main tourist area of Venice and 1 or 2 streets over was night and day. All the shops and the restaurants were much more expensive the closer you got to the Grand Canal. While we didn't eat there, we talked with those that did, and they said the food was a little lower quality as well. So my recommendation is to stay closer to the center part of the city where the food's more enjoyable and better. We visited several different places in Venice. One that I was really excited to see was this parish, which was a filming location for the scene in the movie Spider-Man: Far From Home. Here you can see Spider-Man in the tower trying to prevent its collapse while Mysterio battled the water elemental, or Hydro Man if you're familiar with the Spider-Man comics. Venice is a gorgeous city. Erin and I truly enjoyed exploring, shopping, getting lost, and taking in the beauty all around us. We can't wait to go back and explore the city and its museums more with our kids. From Venice, we took a train to meet our friends. Julie, Jared, and their 2 kids lived in Italy for 3 years while Jared was stationed at an Air Force base. Julie and Jared, Erin and I, then went on an overnight trip to the Dolomite Mountains. The Dolomites border northern Italy and Austria. The 4 of us drove north and planned to spend the night at a refugio, which is a lodge that's traditionally used by seasonal workers while away from home. Refugios today are kind of like beds and breakfasts, but think of them more as like bed and dinners. Driving to the Dolomites, we passed through several small towns, including Cortina, which is a famous Italian ski resort city which hosted the Winter Olympics in 1956 and will host again in 2026. In this slide, you can see the Olympic ski jump from the 56 games. We eventually reached our destination, but the refugio was a 2-kilometer hike away from this parking lot. We knew we were only going to be there one night, so we packed light: sleeping clothes, toiletries, and 2 bottles of wine, just the essentials. The hike to the refugio was beautiful. Everywhere we looked was breathtaking scenes. We saw rivers, waterfalls, and trees and mountains all around us. Here you can see the refugio on the left and an outdoor sauna on the right. Our room had 2 bunks, which was perfect for our purposes. That night, we had a lovely dinner. Only 1 or 2 other parties stayed at the refugio that weekend, one of which was a couple from Kansas City. So talk about a small world. We explored the mountains foothills and the lakes around the refugio and discovered more beauty around every turn. The next day, we hiked down the mountain to our vehicle and drove to another area of the foothills where we would take a cable car to the summit of the Dolomites. Our plan then was to then hike down. The day was extremely overcast and visibility was extremely low. We could not see the endpoint of the cable car track from the foothills. In fact, the cables were swallowed by the clouds about halfway up the mountainside. As I've gotten older, I've developed, let's say, a healthy fear of heights. While I fully knew that the cable car was safe, the ride pushed that fear to its limits. The cable car takes you up 2,800 meters or 8,400 feet. This photo was taken later in the day as the clouds started to part, but it gives you a sense of just how high up we were, especially given the fact that from this point, we were about a quarter of the way down the mountainside. Visibility at the top of the Dolomites was limited, which was perhaps for the best given my recently found healthy fear of heights. We did have enough visibility to see where we needed to go, and perhaps more importantly, where not to go. This mountain range played an important part during the First World War. The Austrian army marched across the Dolomites and established a defensive position during the war. Here you can see a sign marking the path in which the troops transversed. I know I would not want to be carrying a heavy pack or other equipment as I crossed this terrain. Here's another shot of that same path a little bit further back, and you can see how difficult that path would have been to cross. The Austrians dug tunnels into the mountains, creating quarters for their men, machine gun positions, and other lookout spots. As we hiked down the mountain, we encountered an open-air museum, providing interpretive signs and allowing visitors to enter some of the defensive tunnels. The signs offered historical text in Italian, Austrian, and English. We went inside several of these tunnels, often needing a flashlight for navigation. One of the tunnels had a machine gun position. And in the exhibit, the gun was still in place. The bars shown in this photograph prevented individuals from getting close to the gun. We also found lookout positions and an officer's quarters. These tunnels were found throughout the hike in many different locations. As we continued our long hike down the mountain, the fog eventually began to lift, and we got a true sense of the beauty of the region. A little bit further down, we were able to round the corner and look up at the giant fortress that the Dolomites provided. I know I would not want to be a soldier trying to scale this terrain as enemy troops fired down upon me from well-protected positions. The Dolomites and the surrounding areas are breathtaking. The photographs we took only capture a small fraction of their beauty. After the Dolomites, we spent several days exploring other small towns in the northeast region of Italy. One of the cities we went to was Acquieela, which was a Roman Empire city founded in 181 BC. Again, we visited the town well outside the traditional tourism season, which provided some interesting challenges and unique opportunities. As we drove to the town, we were greeted by Roman ruins. Acquieela was an important city for the transportation of goods in the northeast part of the Roman Empire, and here you can see the remnants of the Roman road network. Across from the road were the remains of the Roman Forum of Acquieela. It measured nearly 200 meters long and 80 meters in width. The journey to Acquieela began early in the day for us. We didn't have a lot to eat before we left and needed to find a bathroom as soon as we got there. So after taking some time to explore these first Roman ruins, we located a city map, identified the public bathroom, and set out. Even though we had this map photographed, and I'm pretty good at reading maps, we somehow failed to find the bathroom, but we realized that we were close to the town's museum. We decided to head to the museum in hopes of finding a bathroom. When we reached the museum, despite being listed as open under their hours of operation, the museum in fact was closed, doors locked. Fortunately for us though, our friend Julie had found a sign for a winery right next door to the museum. The gates to the winery's courtyard were unlocked and open, so we went in and met the owner. He invited us into his house, giving us a tour, and graciously allowed us to use his restrooms. Our host explained that his property had been in his family for 14 generations, and the below-ground wine tasting room that he took us to could be dated to the Roman Empire. We sampled 3 different types of wine and a Prosecco. Our host explained that he and his wife had just returned from England, where they took 3rd place with this Prosecco in a European competition. He was extremely generous with his wines, having consumed no food outside of the cheese and crackers provided with the wine. We quickly realized that we needed something to eat. So after a 2-hour private wine tasting, we thanked our host and promised to return after lunch to purchase some wine. We got directions to the restaurant district of the town and continued on our journey. Along the way to the restaurant area, we found more Roman ruins in the town's Basilica. This basilica was built in 1031 AD on the site of existing Paleo-Christian basilica dating back to the 4th century AD. The basilica's mosaic floor, which you see here, is 700 square meters and dates to its earliest days in the 4th century. The detailed work on this floor is amazing and exquisite. We also visited the basilica's crypt, with Christian iconography painted on the walls and ceiling. After we left the basilica, we found a place to eat lunch, where we took the opportunity to look up the name of our host and discovered that he had the title of Baron. His wines are considered in the top 7% of wines produced in the world, and his Prosecco are in the top 5%. After lunch, we continued our journey through Acquieela, working our way back to Julie's car. We found another archaeological site with the foundation ruins of Roman houses and a bathhouse. Seeing these Roman ruins was like looking through a window into the past, imagining the homes and the lives of the Romans who lived there centuries ago. Here is the Roman bathhouse. We eventually made our way back to Julie's car and drove to the winery. We purchased several cases of wine, which we had shipped back to the United States. From there, we returned to our friend's home and rested up before continuing our adventure to Scotland. These are just a few of our highlights of our visit to northern Italy. It has a beautiful region, one of which we are so glad to have explored and visited. Erin and I look forward to returning with our kids someday in the future. Thank you very much for joining me today and watching this presentation.